My name is Herbert Zharare, editor of Business Weekly. Welcome to the interview that I had with Professor Mugano, one of our local economists. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe today announced the devaluation of ZiG by 42.5%. What do you think are the implications of that to the economy?
I am Mr. Zharare. The challenge which we have is that as long as central bank does not have sufficient reserves, it's very catastrophic and tragic, suicidal rather, to float the exchange rate. I'm not in favor of a command exchange rate. I'm not in favor of a fixed exchange rate. We are riding a storm of currency crisis. But when you float the exchange rate, it's just like, when you read about the eagle story, the eagle don't just let its baby drop its baby from the nest without supporting mechanism. It has to let it go when it is ready to fly. Otherwise, it will pounce on the ground. And you see that if you read again the eagle story, the father or the mother will go down and rescue it. It will fly down to go beneath the baby, and it will snatch it upwards if it is failing to fly. That's what should happen in a central bank, where you let the rate float, but you must have enough reserves to manage the exchange rate. So you are going to have what you call managed exchange rate. So the reserves which you have are not enough to support floating. And at the same time, I'm not saying let's fix the exchange rate. This is why I said at the beginning, when the ZiG was introduced, I said the reserves are not enough. I actually put a very detailed tweet on that. Because we must introduce our currency. It is again the same argument I put yesterday, where I said if we are going for monocurrency, we must have sufficient reserves, and they should be $4.5 billion. So this decision is catastrophic. Now it is going to further complicate the financial markets and the currency crisis, because there's not enough reserve to rescue the currency when the rate is running away.
Given that the bank argued that ZiG is backed by gold and other valuable assets, so what is the implications of this devaluation?
The argument on number two, that the ZiG is backed by gold, it's not a sufficient argument. It's not in the name of the asset which is backing the currency. We have no challenges in economics, in understanding the importance of gold and its value, and in backing the currency. Basically, theoretically, it is the right asset to back the currency, gold and US dollars. In our instance, we don't have enough gold. There's a story which is not being discussed of the gold token, which are continuously being issued. I don't know for whatever reason why central bank is continuously issuing gold tokens. Last time I checked, I think at the time when ZiG was introduced, you need to check the correct numbers now. The Reserve Bank had issued 1 ton's equivalent of gold in terms of gold tokens in April this year. So the continuation in terms of issuance of gold tokens tells you that we could be approaching 2 tons. That I don't know, but you need to verify. But the question that these gold tokens, what is backing them? At the same time, we have gold, which is also backing ZiG. So how are they going to share the same reserve gold tokens and the ZiG? That's a fundamental question which must be asked, and central bank must assure the market about that. It is a question which markets are asking: which gold is backing gold tokens? Which gold is backing ZiG? Now, even if there were no gold tokens, the amount of gold in the central bank, 2.5 tons, and additional reserves which are taking us to above $300 million in total sum of total reserves, are not enough. We need $4.5 billion to back this economy. People can argue that we are dollarized. That's effective, but remember, we have psychological traits and challenges that people would want to have sufficient money in the bank. If we are dollarized, as we are saying, if there were no psychological challenges which has been caused by past experiences of currency failure, we shouldn't be having challenges of currency crisis if it is correct, if that argument is correct. So let's put it aside. Let's do the right thing. I would have argued that in this instance, central bank was supposed just to go back to US dollar, going back to draw board, even if it is not our favorite position to do that, and then go back to the drawing board and now begin to work on the fundamentals. I'll put a tweet of the fundamentals I put yesterday for you to see what I'm referring to. But there's not enough gold reserves to back the currency. Gold is good, but it's not enough.
The bank said the bank policy rate will be moved from 20% to 35%. May you also explain the implication of such actions?
The question which you're asking about increasing policy rate, bank policy rate from 25% to 30%, to me it's inconsequential. It's too small. You know, we are putting ZiG in a class of powerful regional currencies such as Rand and Namibian dollar and Pula. We have chronic inflation. If you look at how the prices were moving in the market, they were doubling. So one would have wanted to see these interest rates around 100%, yes, to kind of curb speculative behavior, because naturally if banks will not lend money in ZiG at this rate, they will make losses. But what you must also understand beyond the interest rates is the liquidity caused by printing of by treasuries funding of infrastructure. When treasuries funding infrastructure, it has got what I call expansionary fiscal policy. While each central bank is trying to have a contracting monetary policy, the monetary policy is actually contracting. So you have a contractionary monetary policy against an expansionary fiscal policy. So I'm saying there's so much liquidity is being pushed into the market by Minister of Finance. So this kind of a direct contradiction of policies, of those two policies. When contractors are paid, when suppliers are paid by Minister of Finance, there's so much excess liquidity, which even if you raise interest rates to 1,000%, they have no consequence. Because this direct money being given in court, it's more like as good as they are printing money being given to suppliers and they go on the black market. So yes, avoiding contradiction, I'm saying first, the rates are low. 35% is too low. We could actually talk of 100%, even 130% where we were, but still it's not sufficient. We have an expansion of fiscal policy which must be dealt with, and my argument has been very simple. That let us use long-term finance, infrastructure bonds, diaspora bonds, public-private partnerships to fund infrastructure. We are using cash and we are pushing liquidity in the market, and that's why we have a challenge in terms of inflation and runaway exchange rate. And it doesn't, even if we have a right interest rate, it doesn't help.
The bank's monetary policy committee also announced that the amount of money Zimbabweans can carry outside the country has been reduced from $10,000 to $2,000. What implications does it also have with the economy?
The decision to reduce the amount of money which can be taken out of the country from $10,000 to $2,000 is a good one, very good one. There was no point, no need, I will speak as a patriotic Zimbabwean, to allow an individual to take out 10,000. I have 4 kids and a wife. So you can imagine, I have capacity to take out $60,000 cash if I had that money in my account, and no one can stop me at the airport. So this is a direct, legit externalization of money permitted by central bank. I once raised this question of the Pesigwanyanya on an open platform, which was hosted on Twitter this month. And I questioned him, why are you allowing people to take out $10,000 cash? But if I want to transfer the same money through my bank without a foreign invoice, you don't allow. So it's not a contradiction. Why don't you say, if I am going to be transferring 10,000 and below, you don't have to ask for a foreign invoice? Why are we doing things which are biting us? And Pesigwanya actually refuted it. He said, I'm lying. There's nothing like that. So I referred him to the directive from Central Bank, which was issued last year, that we can take this man out. So I have pain when I think about it, because policymakers, they're not even in touch with the reality. You know, I'm saying it because it was in the public space. And at least I'm sure that message reached home, because I also put it out there to say this is tragic, and that one is a good one. We don't just need to take a man out like that, because we'll actually be draining the little foreign currency which we have unnecessarily, right? So in terms of adding, so
may you please add more information that you think might be of interest to the viewers?
I would want to add this information that the best way of anchoring or defending our currency is production. My worry is very simple. The Central Bank and the Ministry of Finance are touted, or we look at them as if, I'm talking about the market, they are the alpha and omega of addressing economic stability, of addressing currency crisis. Central Bank, even in their own note, they are misplaced when you see how they are writing. They say they're confident that this measure they've put is going to help in stabilizing currency. That is a misplaced view. Central Bank and monetary policy, Central Bank's monetary policy and the fiscal policy from the Ministry of Finance are complementary policies. They complement the real structural policies. We need robust structural policies. Your agricultural policy, which looks at the various supporting agricultural policy instruments. That is your irrigation policy strategy to deal with climate change, to foster production, your livestock growth strategy that we have, your dairy resuscitation strategy, your horticultural strategy that we have. But what is failing in agriculture is the issue of supporting mechanism funding. It's a big issue to operationalize those policies. But at least we have. That I must acknowledge. We have the right policy. We have agriculture investment prospectus, which is looking for investments into the. But what is failing there is the issue of collateral. The list, the 99 list must be finalized. So at least in agriculture we have the policies, but they have to be implemented. We need funding, right? We need to find ways how we can now bring private sector investment into agriculture. So we need to deal with the issue of 99 years. Number one. Number two, we need to deal with the government role in agriculture. Government must not be involved in direct command agriculture, because when they do that, they distort the markets and then they push away possible avenues for value chain financing models. No one would fund the production of maize when government is doing command agriculture, because you can't come as a private sector putting money where government putting money. That money will be distorted by government. People will not be able to honor that control, because already there is a big player called government. That is why you see that in tobacco, where there's no government, we are number 4 in the world in terms of production of tobacco and export of tobacco. Number 4 in the world. We are very competitive. The only challenge there is about putting strong institutions which address market failure, where farmers are being exploited because of the way how that model need to be calibrated, to have more of banks, local banks funding it, as opposed to external players funding it, and then killing the whole auction system with no contract, right? But at least there's a model which you can work around. That is agriculture. In industrial policy, we don't have a robust industrial policy that is anchored on various policy instruments, such as local content policy, local content act, local content regulations, which are aimed at domesticating import. That's a strategy for import substitution, so that we are able to then stop unnecessary imports of chewing gums, of pampers, of toothpicks, of tissue and paper. And of course, fruit and vegetables also in agriculture. We import $4 billion of goods which you can produce locally. This I can argue. I've done that analysis. That is a tissue paper, fruit and vegetables, pharmaceuticals, some fertilizers, right, which you can actually domesticate locally. So we have failed to do that. So this is what we need to deal with. And unlike agricultural ministry, Minister of Agriculture, the industrial Minister of Industry does not have these supporting policies now, which are in place. They just have an industrial policy which with weak instruments, and there's no local content act, there's no local content regulations, which must set out threshold on what should be produced locally, and the incentives for doing that and the punitive measures for not complying with that law, it is not there. I've been advising government to do that. They're not doing that. So then we need our trade policy, which is going to be driving exports and diversification of exports, changing the landscape of our exports from concentrated in South Africa and Dubai and a few countries in Africa to a bigger map in African markets and other in Europe. We need a value addition strategy, which they help us to validate our products, because 92% of our exports are raw materials, right? So we need to configure that. Mining into value addition, agriculture into value addition, but again, it requires the right policy environment to do that. Now, lastly, we need the energy master plan, because we can talk of this currency issue, interest rate, but there's no power. I've seen retailers like Pick and Pay in the public domain. Previous years, they used to spend 37,000 liters of diesel per year in terms of generator use, but now they are using almost 3 million liters. So what do you think that it means in terms of cost of doing business and the support for currency? 3 million liters, which is equivalent to 4.5 million liters going to diesel. It's unbelievable. So we need a master plan. So how do we address our energy issue, energy efficiency, energy generation, energy consumption, all those things? So what I'm saying, this is not an easy walk in the park. We need to go on the drawing board. We need a big indaba, not what we saw in Victoria Falls, ZiG, where people are just talking about nice topics without focusing on how do we defend the currency. We need an indaba on the currency, which is informed by evidence-based research on strategies which must be done. And these issues I'm raising must top that discussion.
Thank you.